He has been called the sleeping prophet, a man of miracles, a seer, a mystic. His work is known around the globe. Hundreds of books have explored his amazing psychic gift. From medical diagnoses to predicting social change, Edgar Cayce's legacy has touched the lives of millions. For 43 years of his adult life, Edgar Cayce gave psychic readings on more than 10,000 different subjects. Nearly everything imaginable is explored in his material: healing, business advice, the Bible, education, child-rearing, ancient civilizations, spirituality, prophecy of world events, and much more.
He looked like a country doctor, a simple person. You wouldn't turn around the street if you saw him. But once you spoke to him, his voice was soft, it was direct, it was honest, it was embracing. And for me, I always saw a double pupil, a superimposure, as if he were looking through eternity. It made you a little uncomfortable at times because you wondered what you had done yesterday or said yesterday that you ought not to have said.
You know, growing up as a teenager with a psychic father is pretty rough. My father was an unusually creative person. He was a fine photographer and was noted for his pictures, especially those of children. Edgar Cayce was an inventor of games. He loved to play all kinds of games and invented one called Pit, which is still on the market. He was a fine bowler. I never won a bowling game from him. He was a lousy golfer, but he loved to play. He was a great fisherman and fished everywhere that he had an opportunity. He was a man who loved to cook and did all kinds of things with preserves and berries of various kinds. He was a great gardener and loved to have exotic trees of all kinds around him. He was a man who was a fine Sunday school teacher, and he always had the largest classes in any church that he worked in.
Most of the people he never saw, many of them didn't even acknowledge the reading or pay for them. But if he was asked, he would give. I don't know what I would have done or where I would be without it.
I thought everybody's father gave readings. Didn't want a doctor, I wanted one of Dad's readings. I think he felt that he had the ability to help people, and that's what he wanted to do.
I often heard him say, do you suppose this is ever going to amount to anything?
The Cayce legacy presents a body of information so valuable that Edgar Cayce himself might have hesitated to predict their impact on contemporary society. 60 years ago, who could have known that one day terms such as meditation, auras, spiritual growth, reincarnation, and holism would become household words to millions? Cayce's organization, the Association for Research and Enlightenment Incorporated, ARE, has grown from its humble beginnings to an association with Edgar Cayce centers in countries around the world. Today, ARE consists of hundreds of educational activities and outreach programs, a children's camp, a multi-million-dollar publishing company, massage and health services, an historical foundation, and an affiliated university. For decades, the Cayce readings have stood the test of time, research, and extensive study. Just who was this man? A farmer boy who would become the most documented psychic of all time.
Curious happenings have impelled me to accept psychic phenomena as a natural experience of my everyday life. If I could sit down with you for a quiet conversation, I'd tell you this story. I was born and reared on a farm near Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Had a normal childhood in many respects. I saw, and still do, the glowing energy patterns that surround individuals. At a very early age, I remember telling my parents that I could also see and talk with my grandfather, who was deceased. Later, I developed the ability to sleep on my school books and retain a photographic memory of their entire contents. As the years passed, I met and fell in love with Gertrude, who would become my wife. Shortly thereafter, I developed a paralysis of the vocal cords and could scarcely speak above a whisper. Everything was tried, but no physician was able to locate a cause. The laryngitis persisted for months. As a last resort, hypnosis was tried. I put myself to sleep and was asked by a specialist to describe the problem. While asleep, I spoke normally, diagnosing the ailment and prescribing a simple treatment. After the recommendations were followed, I could speak normally for the first time in almost a year. The date was March 31st, 1901. That was the first reading. My life is a combination of literally thousands of such experiences. When it was discovered what had happened, many others began to want help. I soon learned that I could put myself into this unconscious state and give readings for anyone, regardless of where they were. Newspapers carried articles about my work, but it wasn't really until Gertrude was stricken with tuberculosis that the readings were brought home to me. Even with medical treatments, she continued to grow worse and was not expected to live. Finally, the doctor said there was nothing more they could do. A reading was given and recommended osteopathy, inhalants, enemas, dietary changes, and a prescription medication. The advice was followed, and Gertrude returned to perfectly normal health.
There hadn't been anything written about her. I guess, of course, she didn't do anything spectacular like Dad did, but she kept the family together and raised Julien and I guess that was a job. So,
another personal confirmation of the readings came when the family was faced with a second crisis involving their eldest son, Julien, who had been playing in Edgar Cayce's photography studio.
The flash burns were so severe that the doctors felt that the eyes could not be saved without taking one of them out. Our family physician told me this, and it was then that I asked Edgar Cayce, my father, to give a reading. When the treatments he recommended were applied, in applications on the eyes, internal medicine, and a change of diet, the eyes began to heal. And in a matter of weeks, they removed the bandages, and I could see.
From that time on, Edgar Cayce immersed himself in giving readings. Each day, he would lie down on a couch, become comfortable, put his hands up to his forehead, and begin to pray. When he saw a brilliant flash of light, it was the signal that he could continue. He'd lower his hands to his stomach, and when his eyelids began to flutter, his wife would give him the appropriate suggestion. In this state, it seemed that he could answer any question or provide any type of information requested. According to the readings, each of us writes the story of our lives through our thoughts, our deeds, and our activities with one another. These accounts are stored in what the readings called the Akashic Records, and it was from this place, as well as from the minds of the individuals for whom he was giving the readings, that Edgar Cayce gathered his psychic information. Although the readings cover thousands of topics such as, who am I? Why am I here? And what is the purpose of life? Many can be categorized into subject areas such as health and healing, philosophy and reincarnation, dreams and dream interpretation, ESP and psychic phenomena, and spiritual growth, meditation, and prayer.
When I think of Edgar Cayce, I think of more than the psychic man, I think of health.
For all healing comes from the one source. Whether there is the application of foods, exercise, medicine, or even the knife, it is to bring to the consciousness of the forces within the body that aid in reproducing themselves, which is the awareness of creative or God forces.
Cayce saw total health as encompassing the physical, mental, and spiritual components of the individual, and offered important insights into how each of us can stay well. The readings make recommendations for hundreds of health concerns, from diet, childbirth, and longevity, to arthritis, cancer, and psoriasis. Called the father of holistic medicine, Cayce was ahead of his time in describing the workings of the human body and foreseeing the direction of health care. Not only did Cayce prescribe treatments for patients, occasionally he even recommended certain doctors for them to go to, although he had no conscious knowledge of them. One such individual was Dr. Harold J. Riley.
I got to know him personally as well as through the readings. The important fact is that these readings were so erudite, and the more I went into them, the more I realized the basic philosophy of the readings were the things that I myself had learned in the different disciplines that I had studied. Usually it was a combination of therapies, all of which worked into what I used afterwards as a current word name called CARE, C-A-R-E, and that stands for circulation, assimilation, relaxation, and elimination. And believe me, when you get those things going in the body, the body doesn't have too much chance to become a good culture medium for a germ.
One of the early readings that was so startling to me, we were in New York, and this lady was having a reading for her son, who was ill. And at the end of this reading, after Mrs. Casey had given him the suggestion to wake up, he started talking again. He says, "We have here the body of Clara Inlow. We would advise that she have surgery for this condition." And I didn't know who Clara Inlow was, where she lived, or anything. And we got back to Dayton 2 or 3 days later, and there was a letter from this lady saying that she just wanted his advice. So she apparently was just thinking about him and about getting his advice, and the reading came through.
The number one thing is mind, body, spirit. He brings it all together and hands it to you on a silver plate. Here it is. This is you, the universe, the earth, everything in a nutshell.
It was the health information that led the Casey family to Virginia Beach in the mid-1920s. One of Casey's lifelong dreams was to build a hospital and to form an organization that would work with his psychic information. The readings advised the location, Virginia Beach, then a small resort town, and it was there that the hospital was built. Although lost during the Depression, the building was bought back in the mid-50s, and from that day forward became association headquarters. Today, the principles of healing remain the same and are explored by individuals, physicians, researchers, and healthcare practitioners throughout the world.
We find that these conditions arose as the result of what might be called occupational disturbances. Not enough in the sun, not enough hard work. There has been plenty of brain work, but the body is supposed to coordinate the spiritual, mental, and physical. He who does not give recreation a place in his life and the proper tone to each phase, well, he just fools himself. Someday he pays the price.
The consciousness, our soul, continues. We didn't start here, nor do we end here. It's sort of the idea that we are in the body at this particular time in a given lifetime, but once we pass out of it, we still have our individuality. In other words, the soul survives. And that was Casey's view, that we change places. We go to different realms of consciousness, but we never really die.
To find that you lived, died, and were buried under the cherry tree in grandmother's garden does not make you one whit a better person. But to know that you spoke unkindly and suffered for it, and in the present may correct it by being righteous, that is worthwhile. For each soul constantly meets itself. And if each soul would but understand those hardships which are accredited much to others are caused most by self, know that in those you are meeting thyself.
The Casey approach to reincarnation provides a philosophical setting to the past, focusing on practical ways of dealing with this life, living, growing, and being of service to one another in the present, in this time, in this place, right now.
The Casey readings tell an extraordinary story about how life is meaningful and purposeful, and we're all here on a grand purpose. But then they get even more specific and say that everybody is here on a specific mission, that each of us has come with unique talents and abilities and strengths to contribute something and to grow in a very special way, a very particular life path. And when Edgar Casey gave life readings to individuals, and there's about 2,000 of them, He wasn't just telling them stories about their past lives. He was helping them see their mission or their purpose for this lifetime. And that's something each one of us can discover for ourselves.
If you want to know what you need to work on in life, look at the people that you keep attracting to you. And if you want to know what you have to work with, look at the positive people in your life, because you can see your own strengths and weaknesses in other people.
I feel that this material gives people a better way of living their lives. It's a philosophy of tolerance and openness, and invites people of all backgrounds to come and share and to learn from one another, to find out more about themselves as people.
If you don't apply, you're not going to learn. And if you apply incorrectly, you'll have to correct. And every jot and every tittle has to be accounted for. And we used to sometimes laughingly say, the jots and the tittles are upon us.
Karma is only memory. It is not destiny. One's past merely provides a framework of potentials and probabilities. An individual's free will determines the actual experiences he or she has in the present.
Know that it is not all just to live, not all just to be good, but good for something, that ye may fulfill that purpose for which ye have entered this experience. And that purpose is that ye might know yourself to be yourself, and yet one with the creative forces, or God.
Dreams are given to us for our benefit, to learn from, to grow with.
The dreams as we see that come to the entity are those correlations of the physical with the subconscious forces of the body. And from same there may be gained those truths, those lessons, which, used aright, may be for the development of the body spiritually, mentally, financially.
Hundreds of Casey readings deal with the subject of dreams and dream interpretation. The dream state is one of self-examination, but it is also much more. A storehouse of all of our wishes, hopes, and memories of past experiences. Dreams can diagnose the cause of physical ailments. They can point out thoughts and emotions that we have perhaps tried to overlook, and they can make suggestions for improving our relationships with others. Dreams can be a catalyst for change in our lives. They can also be reaffirming that we are headed in the right direction, that they can give us sort of a spiritual upliftment that we might really need at a given time. Perhaps one of the most significant statements regarding dreams from the Casey readings is that nothing of significance ever happens to us without it first being foreshadowed in our dreams. Casey's life story contains many different examples of ESP, such as telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, and retrocognition. Telepathy is also known as mind-to-mind communication. Once, while in Kentucky, Casey gave a reading for a man in New York. Casey saw the man smoking a cigar, heard him whistling a particular song, saw him meet with another man about a piece of investment property, and then watched him look over 3 pieces of mail. These events were later verified.
They gave him the suggestion and said, you will have before you the body of so-and-so who was supposed to be in an apartment in New York. He lay there a minute and he says, we do not have the body. Said, he's not here. Said, he's on a bus coming across town. Said, there's been an accident and the traffic's tied up. Said, there's a delay. He'll be here in a few minutes. We'll wait. He lay there for 15 minutes, didn't say a word. And at the end of that time, he says, he's come in now. He proceeded to give the reading. Well, when he said he's come in now, he then got up and went in the other room and called the man on the phone. The man said, that's exactly right. Said, I know I was supposed to be in my apartment, and I was on the way there, and I was on a bus, and there was a lot of traffic, and the bus was late, and I just this minute walked in.
I felt an instant attraction to this man. He seemed so, well, I just trusted him, and I didn't think anything about his readings. When I sat there and listened to it, it was just like any other job of taking dictation. One day during a reading, he said a string of words, so I was wondering whether I should put a dash or comma or just how to word this. And over there asleep on the couch, I mean, his eyes closed, he said, "Put a comma between these." and a few times he did that, and other people learned that it was good to be present for the reading, because if they thought of questions, he would answer them without being asked.
Although the readings discuss major global, political, and social upheavals, they also provide some inspiring insights into humanity's collective future. Casey predicted that the time would come when every individual would realize their responsibility toward one another, a realization that would change the thought of humankind. During the height of World War II, he saw a united world, a renewed sense of spirituality all over the planet, even in international currency. He predicted an alliance with Russia, freedom out of communism, democracy out of China, and the discovery of Atlantis. To him, these psychic experiences were a natural byproduct of spiritual attunement. The Casey readings on spiritual growth have served as a guide for decades, enabling people from every religious background to become more aware of themselves and their relationship to one another. Small interdenominational study groups exist worldwide, exploring the readings' approach to cooperation, service, love, meditation, and prayer. From Casey's perspective, part of our purpose here on earth is to come to know our true relationship with God, and perhaps more than anything else, meditation is the key to understanding that relationship.
Sitting quietly each day for a few minutes and awakening this divine within, I heard about all my life and had a heck of a time getting myself to the point of trying it on a consistent, persistent basis. But once I began to do that, I think there really can come a sense of, yes, there's more to us than a physical body.
We especially try to help people work with what I call the keys to healing, which are the ideal, prayer, meditation, application.
As we journey through life on the spiritual path, working with meditation and prayer, the natural outcome, according to Casey, is that we will enter into this oneness of consciousness.
I think that the philosophy in the Casey material, for me as for a lot of other people, is what has put together a lot of the loose ends of my understanding of who I am, what life is all about, what my relationship with God is, and that is a lifelong work.
There is that perfect pattern within each one of us. You know, the soul made in the image of God, therefore there has to be some part of us that's perfect. We don't generally see that, but at least that potential is there. And how does that manifest? How can we enhance that? What can we do at every level to live in the earth in a more constructive, helpful, hopeful, loving way?
Most often, Casey used the language of traditional Christianity. However, the ideas in the readings are deeply ecumenical, so that the pattern of Jesus' life is presented as a pattern for every soul in the earth.
Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, thy neighbor as thyself. This the whole law. This the whole answer to the world, to each and every soul. This is the answer to the world conditions as they exist today. Man's answer to everything has been power. Power of money, power of position, power of wealth, power of this, that, or the other. This has never been God's way. Will never be God's way. Rather, little by little, line upon line, here a little, there a little, each thinking rather of the other. Make the world a better place, because you have lived in it.
When the Association for Research and Enlightenment was formed in 1931, the purpose was to research and make available practical insights from Casey's psychic readings. Today, the ARE community has grown to tens of thousands of members around the world, regional offices, and programs that include international outreach, conferences, and educational activities. A graduate degree program is available through Atlantic University, and the Harold J. Riley School of Massotherapy trains individuals in the concepts of massage and holism found in the Casey readings. Even now, the purpose of these ever-growing organizations is to allow individuals the opportunity to research the Casey information for themselves, letting them discover ways in which this material can be practically applied in daily life.
The specific information in the Edgar Casey readings that was given years ago for thousands of people is just as relevant today.
I think the beating heart of the ARE would be people who are committed to doing the best job they can do of living their ideals and purposes.
Our goal is not to escape the earth. It's not to get out of the physical. It's not to wait just for heaven and then everything will be all right. The goal from the Casey perspective is that we need to bring heaven into the earth. That the very best we can think of, our goal is to bring it here, because we are children of the divine, and that we came to the earth for a reason. And that reason really is to manifest the spirituality of God into the earth.
When I try to think what this work might be like decades and decades from now, I imagine that Edgar Casey's readings will be readily available and accessible in a wide variety of ways throughout the world. But at the same time, my hope is that the ideas in those readings will have inspired creative endeavors and new initiatives and new ways of doing the kinds of things Edgar Casey did well into the 21st century and beyond.
Much of the information given hasn't even been tapped yet.
Who will help me most? And he says, God. What word?
Members of the ARE come from all walks of life and spiritual traditions. Perhaps these words of Edgar Casey best describe the ongoing work of the association.
Neither I nor the association that carries on the work with the readings has anything to sell, nor has any instant answers. What we do have is a body of information. Of this information, I can only say that in my life, and in the lives of many of those who have come in contact with the readings, there seems to be much that is a help. If this knowledge is to be of any lasting benefit to mankind, it will require open-minded, intelligent research by men and women in all walks of life, engaged in a cooperative effort. There are no barriers to prevent any individual from taking part in the association.
The legacy of this kind and gentle man lives on today in the extraordinary work that he left behind, and in the people who keep his dream alive through the Association for Research and Enlightenment. It is an association of people, built upon the information contained in the Edgar Casey readings. Information that has touched the lives of millions. Information that has proven valuable for nearly a century. Information that explores our relationship with God, one another, and ourselves. As individuals grasp the concepts in the Edgar Casey readings, they can transform themselves and, in turn, transform society.
All knowledge is to be used in the manner that will give help and assistance to others. And the desire is that the laws of the Creator be manifested in the physical world.